Everyone, welcome back to another Aggie Sports Zoom Hangout. We got Robert Sesson over here from the Eagle, also Alex Miller in the background. I'm Travis Brown from the Eagle, but we have another Brown on here, CL Brown, who covers North Carolina A&M's opponent here for the Orange Bowl. CL, thanks so much for joining us today.
No problem. Thanks, you guys, for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get started. If you would, for fans who are of A&M who might not have necessarily recapped or followed much of North Carolina, could you recap the season a little bit and just kind of say how the Tar Heels got here to the Orange Bowl?
Well, there were a lot of expectations, high expectations coming into this season based off of the fact that they returned most of their skilled players from last season. Well, they returned all of their skilled players from last season and most of their offense, including Sam Howell, who was a freshman quarterback that started every game last season, showed a lot of promise. And they were very happy with Mack Brown returning for his first year out of retirement. 7-6 last year, which was their record. 7-6 was like ecstatic. Everybody was surprised he could achieve that in his first year, coming off of a 2-win season in Larry Fedora's last year. So this season, they really thought they could compete for the ACC championship and maybe get in that final game with Clemson for a shot to win it all. And who knows where they would go after that. But they had a couple of disappointments along the way, and one of them, probably the biggest disappointment of the season, was losing at Florida State, which if any of your fans saw them play, they were horrible this season. And Carolina went down there, got a punt blocked on their first possession. The next play, Florida State scored a touchdown, and it wasn't done after that because Florida State got up big and Carolina came back in the second half, shut them out in the second half, but they were down 31-7 at halftime. So it was one of those games where it just showed a little bit of immaturity on the team's part, because they, at that point in the season, and you think back, this is when before the Big Ten started playing, so a lot of people didn't have teams like Ohio State ranked in their top 25. Carolina was number 5 in the country back at that point in the year. And so Mack Brown felt like they didn't handle that well, didn't handle the expectations that come with it, didn't handle going on the road to play a team that's looking at it like, we're not very good right now, but here's the number 5 team in the nation. Let's smack them in the mouth. And that's what happened there. So that was a big disappointment. They also lost on the road at Virginia in a game that they feel like they should have won 44-41. So those were the 2 hiccups in the season. But the rest of the year, they've pretty much hit their high notes. Of course, they lost to Notre Dame in a game that was competitive, and Notre Dame put it away in the fourth quarter with a touchdown. But they are very happy to be in the Orange Bowl, especially coming off the win at Miami that secured the bid.
You talked about handling stuff, CL. So how are they going to handle missing so many key players? I mean, A&M went through this a couple of years ago, and they played North Carolina State in the Gator Bowl, and they were missing only, I think, two key guys, and they were a mirror of themselves. So what are you looking for? How did they handle in such a short time? You don't even have 15 practices to prepare, missing such huge players.
Yeah, that's the big question, especially on offense, where you have their top 2 running backs in my Javonte Williams. They combined for 2,300 yards rushing this year. Both I expect to see on Sundays. And the thing about it was they never really groomed a third back, because Carter and Williams didn't get injured at all. They basically split carries, so they kept each other fresh throughout the course of the game. And there was never really a need for Carolina to go to that third back until it was a blowout situation, which, they probably didn't have enough of those to really get other guys in. So what we're looking at for Saturday is British Brooks, who has been a key player on special teams for them this past year. He's a special teams captain, and his role on special teams will actually be reduced because now he becomes a key player in the backfield for them. And Josh Henderson, he's a sophomore and Brooks is a junior, but both of those guys will be who they're looking to, which in a way, it's just going to be a preview for next season for this team, because those two guys figured to be at least they figured Michael Carter was going to be graduating. Javonte was always kind of 50-50 whether he would return or come back. So now we just get to see what they're made of now. They also had they're down to 3 backs because a 4th back, DJ Jones, had a foot injury, so he's not playing in this game. And the 3rd back, Elijah Green, is he's literally green in that his high school, he's a freshman, and his high school played like I formation. It was real old school with this running style, and he's not a great pass blocker. He's not really well versed in the passing game, how they need him to be to get a lot of reps in this game. So I'd imagine you wouldn't see him much. So they're down to that. Receiver, De'Ami Brown led them. He's the first receiver in program history to have back-to-back 1,000-yard receiving seasons. And he'll be missed, but they're pretty deep at receiver, including De'Ami's brother, Khafre Brown, who is faster. He's had some big plays this year for them. Caught a 76-yard touchdown against Virginia, and would have been a 75-yarder against Wake Forest, but his brother got called for a blocking penalty, so it brought it back 10 yards. But he's speedster, big play potential guy. So at receiver, it won't be as bad, but definitely their running game is going to take a big hit. And on the defensive side of the ball, Chaz Surratt was their leading tackler at linebacker. They were always high on his backup, Eugene Asante. I don't think, obviously, he's their leading tackler, so you're going to miss something, but I don't think the slippage will be as big as what we'll see at running back.
Does it surprise you? I know a lot of the conversation yesterday with A&M is you have a lot of time number 5 teams who just missed the playoff kind of put up duds in the bowl game because, there's that letdown from missing the playoff. It's a little bit of a different element here when you have the ability of opt-outs. Does it surprise you that the team that kind of fought through the season to get back into this New Year's Six kind of picture has all of these opt-outs and has put themselves in a position maybe that they wouldn't be as strong as they would beforehand?
I think this year it has just the asterisk altogether on it. I think because of the pandemic, because they've been basically under lockdown and had to keep a strict routine just to be able to play on Saturdays, I think that kind of wore on these guys. And I think they felt like kind of finally we can take a step back and exhale and kind of let our hair down a little bit and just it's not as big as it probably would have been had this been a normal season and the season didn't last quite as long and they were living their regular college lives during the course of the year. I still can't say for sure that they would have played in this game because ultimately they're looking towards their future in the NFL and trying to be the best they can be, position the best they can be for that draft. But I do think just this being the biggest bowl in, since 1950 for the program, I think that may have weighed on them a little bit more if this was a regular year.
What if I did a little coach speak here and say okay, CL, the same offensive linemen are there that open the holes for those 2 great running backs. And sometimes players will go, we got to rise up. We got to lift this team, but they're going up against a pretty good run defense. So what's your evaluation of that offensive line? Did the backs make that offensive line, or does this offensive line be able to stand on its own?
Wow, that's a great question. I think probably I would lean towards saying the backs made the offensive line. And I look back at the Notre Dame game in particular where they kind of got pushed around by Notre Dame's defensive front. And that kind of is what changed the course of that game. After Carolina was able to score early on in the game, Notre Dame shut it down. And the second half, they didn't get a whole lot. So coming into this year, offensive line was the biggest question mark because they didn't have the depth that Mac Brown would have liked. He wanted to have ideally 10 guys, but he was just looking for 8 that he felt like he could really depend upon. And that was a question because they still had some young guys who hadn't hadn't really proven themselves yet. But I will say that they've played, to me, they played better than expected as a unit this year. And it's still probably the thing I'm going to be looking at on Saturday to see, mainly just if they can give Sam Howell enough time. That was another thing against Notre Dame. They were able to complete passes downfield when he had time, but a lot of snaps he just didn't have the time to get back and feel comfortable in the pocket in order to make enough of a progression to find the open guys. So that's going to be a huge key to how they'll play on Saturday.
I think we have a question, but I think it's going to be a real quick one to answer. Alex, why don't you go ahead and fire that in from someone who's watching on Facebook?
Yeah, we got a question from Chris on Facebook Live. He asked, are the Aggies really wearing the burnt orange new Adidas uniforms? And the answer is no.
No.
Those are Photoshopped uniforms from the good folk over at Good Bull Hunting. Robert at Good Bull Hunting, he likes to make fake uniforms. And those are definitely not what A&M's going to be wearing this Saturday in Miami. If I'm correct, I think A&M's going to be in white. So maroon helmet, white jersey, white pants, which means I'm pretty sure North Carolina will be wearing their Carolina blues. So should be a good uniform matchup, but no, they will not be wearing orange uniforms.
I'll be sure to let Robert Behrens know that his Photoshop made our Zoom hangout. Anyway, CL, Mack Brown is a guy, of course, that is very familiar to the people down here from his time at Texas, and of course was very familiar to people up in North Carolina from what he did there before coming down to Texas. What's the overall general fan acceptance, appreciation, or counter to having Mack Brown back and what he's been able to do for the program?
Oh man, Mack has been great since he got back here. He's really cultivated the fan base. There's a love affair. I mean, obviously there were good feelings about him when he left. That's how he was able to come back. They really revered Mack Brown from his first stint here, and he built the program. I mean, his first two seasons, back in the late 80s, they had 1 in 10 years, and by the time he left, they had top 5 defenses, and they were a top 10 team back when he left for Texas. So I'll be honest, when he got hired, I was very doubtful because I felt like he'll only be here for a few years based on his age, and they'll basically be hitting the restart button. But the way he has energized this program, the recruiting is great. They had a top 15 class that they signed in December. They have a lot of momentum right now as a program, and obviously making the Orange Bowl just kind of adds to it. So I definitely think Bubba Cunningham, the athletic director here, hit a home run by bringing Mack back.
And what's the ceiling then? I mean, Travis and I were joking the other day. You hit on a couple things, biggest bowl in 50 years, but basketball season's here. We always wonder how big really is North Carolina football, and how big can it be in Mack's return trip?
Well, I mean, it will never be basketball. I think that's safe to say here, but there's obviously there's a love for football here. There's a love for Mack Brown here. And when you're successful here, that kind of brings, there's a bit of fair weather. Well, not a bit. There's a lot of that has to do with it, because people will get disinterested if they stumble early and look like they're not going to be any good. But one of the things, before this season, obviously, they had sellouts last year at home games, and that's coming off of a 2-win season, and Mack Brown, energized the program to the extent where they had they sold out their season tickets for the entire year. So I think that the expectations going into next year, with obviously Sam Howell is kind of the key to everything in terms of what the expectations will be. And they'll return a lot of guys on defense, so the defense will be improved. They'll still feel like this will be a team that can compete for ACC championship and get in that game. Obviously, Clemson is the standard for the league right now. But they played Clemson last year in Mack Brown's first year. I think it was 21-20. That was a game that came down to Mack Brown going for a 2-point conversion instead of a late fourth quarter touchdown trying to get it into overtime. So they feel like they like their chances if they get another shot at the king.
Listen, I get it. If I was an 18-year-old kid who was good at football, I'd maybe sign up for North Carolina just to see Mac Brown dance. So I don't know what's going on there. Well, let's shift back to the game real quick before we wrap this things up. What would be your keys for North Carolina to win this game that they need to accomplish in the Orange Bowl?
First and foremost, I think they got to find a way to get a semblance of a running game, because Sam Howell operated a lot off of play action passes. Once they got the running game going, that's how they're able to be so successful throwing downfield. So if they can at least keep Texas A&M honest by being able to run the ball enough to keep them off balance, I think that will bode well for them. Also, defensively, early on in this year, they had a problem with tackling, I feel like, and I feel like they had a problem with physical teams that would pound you up front and just get their running backs going downhill. And so I think that is something that I'll be keeping an eye on, how well they're able to defend the run against Texas A&M, because they got obviously a couple of great backs there. And I think Jimbo Fisher is a lot of guys, will get away from the run, but I think Jimbo likes to stick to his guns, so to speak, when it comes to the running game. So I think those are the main two things that I'm looking at. Carolina's running game, how they're able to allow it to help the passing game, help Sam Howell buy some time in the pocket, and how well they're able to stop the run.
Uh-oh, we lost Cease.
Yeah, I still can't hear.
Cease. I think we lost. There, you might have something going on there. That's okay. We'll go ahead and wrap this thing up. CL, thank you so much for giving us a few minutes of your time, and we'll be sure to see you this weekend. Where can people find your work and find you on Twitter and whatnot if they want to follow you leading up to the Orange Bowl?
Yes, my stories will be posted at newsobserver.com. That's the Raleigh News and Observer. And I'm on Twitter at CL Brown Hoops.
There it is.
which obviously speaks to what part of the country I'm in, right?
Yeah. Cease, we got you back, I think.
Yeah, I was just saying is at the house, who knows what internet does, but do you have like one or two surprise players we possibly look for, since you cover the teams, guys that we might not know about, the standard guy we're looking at North Carolina that might shine in this game?
Well, I'll give you a couple of young guys who came on late. First, Tony Grimes, a cornerback who's a true freshman. He was, by some accounts, the #1 rated corner for the class of 2021, and he graduated early and joined the team back in August. And he made his first start. I believe Notre Dame was his first start, if I'm not mistaken. They threw him in the game. They couldn't stop Wake Forest. That was a high-scoring game. They ended up winning 59-53, but they trailed at one point 45-24 in that game, and they couldn't stop them. Wake Forest had like 500 yards of offense in the third quarter. And so I think they felt like they had nothing to lose. Let's see what Tony Grimes can do in this situation. And he came in, played well, earned his spot. So he made the start against Notre Dame, started against Miami. And I think Texas A&M may test him, because he's still somebody who is, very much green. And I think he's up for the test in terms of his confidence and talent, but we'll see if that experience comes into play where he does some things that, that freshmen tend to do. I also think you have to look at the receivers who will try and make up for the loss of De'Ami Brown. I mentioned one earlier, Coffrey Brown, and I think Emory Simmons, who is kind of a physical receiver for North Carolina. I think he has the potential to have a big game in this situation. And then lastly, I go back to linebacker Eugene Asante, who will be replacing Chaz Surratt, who opted out for the game. They've always talked highly of him at linebacker, so we'll actually get to see him out there for a lot of reps and see what all the talk is about.
Definitely. Well, again, like I said, thank you so much for joining us, and Be sure to follow CL Stuff as we lead into the game, and be sure to check theeagle.com for all the lead up to the Orange Bowl from the A&M side. From Robert Cessna and Alex Miller, I'm Travis Brown. We'll talk to you next time.